Next up, actress Lori Loughlin and her husband, fashion designer Massimo Giannulli, I think I got that right, are scheduled to be sentenced in a Boston courtroom this Friday for bribing their daughter's way into college. Yesterday, prosecutors asked the judge to put Loughlin behind bars for 2 months and Giannulli 5 months after they both pled guilty to paying $500,000 in bribes to have their two daughters recruited to the USC crew team when neither actually rode. The pair is among 33 parents and around 20 college coaches and other high ed officials who've been charged in the massive conspiracy involving some of the country's most prestigious schools and more than $25 million in bribes. The ringleader behind it all, a man named Rick Singer, who ran a college counseling company that helped these families find a so-called side door into schools like Yale or USC and funneled his fees through a fake nonprofit. In the new book, Unacceptable, Privilege, Deceit, and the Making of the College Admissions Scandal, a pair of Wall Street Journal reporters trace his path from small-timer to the biggest college admissions fraudster in U.S. history, and all the parents and coaches who chose to play and kids who got caught up in this along the way. Jennifer Levitz and Melissa Korn, congratulations, and so glad to have you here. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks.
Jennifer, can I start with you and the guy without whom none of this would have been possible, the ringleader, Rick Singer? Give us a little bio of this guy and how he got from where he started to a courtroom in South Boston.
Rick Singer grew up outside Chicago. He was just in a sort of lower middle class family in an affluent area. He, from the very get-go, the thing that defined him was he was just so competitive. Anyone you talk to just says, this is the most competitive guy I've ever met. If he played basketball, he would throw elbows. If he played baseball, he would say he got a home run when he only got a double. This just continues on and on. He goes off to college. He doesn't have a smooth path. It takes him about 6 years to graduate. Graduates from a college in Texas. He then becomes a college coach, and he's a well-liked guy. He's charismatic. He's an athlete. He's has a real rapport with kids. Some people would even say he's like a Pied Piper with kids. But somewhere along the line in college coaching, he realizes that there's a system he can exploit.
My favorite story of all of them along the way, Jennifer, is when he's coaching the mid-schoolers at a Jewish community center, wasn't it, in Nebraska, where he's basically doing, I think one of you wrote, well, you both wrote, that he was essentially playing the Bobby Knight of Nebraska. I thought it was great. So, Melissa, what was the skill that Singer had that was able to convince people who were rich and in some cases famous to do something that violated the law?
Yeah, Singer had this charisma about him. He was quite charming, I should say. And he really understood what some of the fears and anxieties of these parents would be. And he was able to really pick at them. And the parents, were willing participants in this. They acknowledged, those who have pleaded guilty have acknowledged, yes, it was my own ego that got me involved. But he was really able to say, listen, your kid only has a mediocre shot at getting into that dream school, but I have a solution for you. You could do this your own way.
But it wasn't just ego. I mean, from reading this book, there is this colossal sense of entitlement. That was the common thread through virtually all of these parents, was it not?
There certainly was the sense of entitlement that parents felt that their kids deserved this, or it was expected that they would get admission to these schools. They had gotten everything they ever wanted to this point, so why would this be any different?
Jennifer, the most painful moment, I think, in the whole book is, I hope I pronounce his name right, Matteo Sloan. Can you tell the story of this young man and his relationship with his father?
Yes, Matteo Sloan lives in L.A., a very wealthy family, attended a prestigious private school where he talked about how he worked so hard in high school. He knew what was expected of him, loaded up the AP classes, stayed up till 2 a.m. As he says, it was just a grind. And then he manages to get into USC. And sophomore year, he finds out on March 12th, 2019, that he's in USC because his father has paid more than $200,000, through Rick Singer to present him as a water polo player.
And what does he say to his father when his father comes home from arraignment and he's found out what his father had done?
He's standing in the kitchen, and the first thing he says to his father is, "Why didn't you believe in me?"
Yeah, that is so heartbreaking. It is just and just to go back, Melissa, for 1 second, the thing that is almost comical, were it not so painful, is the father having the kid pose in the damn pool in water polo gear, a sport which the kid did not play. That's right?
Correct. A lot of these students didn't actually play the sports that they were being put up as recruits for. And some of the time the kid posed for some pictures. Some of the time there was a photoshopped picture, put their face on someone else who had succeeded in it.
I'm embarrassed to admit, I think, to both of you, that at moments in this book, I actually felt bad for a fleeting second for a parent or two. I can't remember. I always confuse Huffman and Laughlin. One of them who cheated and then decided not to cheat, or whatever it was. And for a fleeting second, but then I say to myself, well, first, did either of you have ever had that experience in the research and writing of this book, starting with you, Jennifer?
Yeah, sure. There were a few parents that had some real anxieties that you could relate to. There was, you mentioned Felicity Huffman. She had a daughter with learning challenges, and she was so worried about her testing. There was another dad in there that really struck me because he was trying everything. His daughter had a lot of problems, had to go to a boarding school for troubled teens, and he was terrified, she'd get out of that and not have a structured environment. So they had some real concerns that I think a lot of parents can relate to, but you do have to keep reminding yourself that people go through this all over the place.
Exactly. We all do.
Right.
And most of us aren't spending $200,000 to get our kid into USC. About a month and a half or 2 months after this all broke in March, Andrew Lelling, the U.S. attorney who was lead prosecutor, was on this show with me. And I posed the question to him. I'd like you to listen to that exchange and get your feedback on this. Here's Andrew Lelling. What's the difference between a couple of parents paying tens of thousands of dollars to a coach or that ringleader of an operation like this, and say Charles Kushner donating $2.5 million to Harvard just weeks before his son Jared got in?
The difference is fraud. So, as has been true for time immemorial, if you donate $10 million to a school, that school's more likely to take your kid. There's no fraud. Here you have people making things up. So you have fake SAT scores, or you have students creating fake profile, or parents creating fake profiles for their kids, implying or showing that the kid is an athlete when the kid is not an athlete.
Melissa, I hate to put you in the position of editorialist, but, my attitude is you donate $2.5 million. Your son's Jared Kushner, who his high school guidance counselor told him, don't bother applying to Harvard. You're not qualified. You're committing fraud, too. You're saying he's eligible because I gave you $2.5 million. Do you think Lelling is, technically he's right about the law, but does that rub you the wrong way, too, or no?
I don't know if it rubs me the wrong way. I do think it makes a lot of people uncomfortable, this idea of what Singer called the back door, right? You just make large donations to the pool and you get special treatment. It is completely legal, but it is an uncomfortable fact of college admissions. And I think that was the defense of a lot of these parents, was we just thought we were doing a variation on that. But as Lelling said, once you start introducing the fake athletic profiles, that's a tougher defense for sure.
So, Jennifer, quickly, side door illegal, back door not illegal. That's okay?
I think that the back door is pretty icky. I think that it doesn't feel fair to most people. We have a whole chapter in the book called Gray Area, sort of possibly gross but legal, and that's one of the things in.
Before you guys go, is anything going to really change? I know there's a lot of good rhetoric based upon Andrew Lelling's work and your work, starting with you, Jennifer. Is the world going to change, or are this just going to continue until it's found out yet again? Starting with you, Jennifer.
I think think there's probably some people nervous about this. I certainly think that some of these schools, the watchdogs, could do a better job of making sure this doesn't happen. I don't know if people ever stop trying to chase status.
Melissa, how about you?
Yeah, I tend to be pretty cynical about this, and as we talk about in the book, the kind of main body of college admissions officers and guidance counselors says this isn't an admissions scandal, and I think that's a little tough for me to swallow, that there will be real change when people in admissions aren't still quite acknowledging that there are weaknesses and holes in the system that allowed this to happen. And I think until they admit that there's a problem, it's tough to see real reform.
Well, if you don't think there's a problem, all you have to do is read your book. Jennifer Levitz, Melissa Korn, thanks and congratulations on your work. I appreciate it. The book again, Unacceptable: Privilege, Deceit, and the Making of the College Admissions Scandal.